Okay, now, hello everyone, also from my side, from listening to the recording now. This session is about the UI5 tooling, the build and development tooling for UI5. And today, together with Merlin, I'm presenting you what it's about. Let's look first at this one sentence, which explains or gives you an overview on what the tooling, the UI5 tooling is about. It is the open source, modular, configurable, and extensible CLI for efficient development of application libraries, applications, libraries, and reuse components with the UI5 framework. So there's a lot of insight in this sentence. And during this presentation, we will go into a bit into the details of all these statements. Let's take a look a bit on the motivation for the UI5 tooling. Our main motivation with the UI5 tooling is really that we want to increase your developer experience and thus also increase your development efficiency with the UI5 tooling. You know, we have a quite lengthy history on developing tooling in the first days, in the early days of the UI5 framework internally in SAP. And also then afterwards, with moving to Open UI5, we also started then to develop a grunt-based tooling. All these tools, more or less, have been developed in a proprietary task runner environment. And with that, we are somehow limited on the way how to consume that. And with moving on with UI5 in general and the need to be used in various environments, agnostic is a very important piece of the UI5 tooling. So think agnostic, use it agnostic. And this is one of the main pillars we are aiming for with the tooling. So let's look into the key pillars of the motivations here you see on the slide. The first key pillar of the motivation is open source. So we develop the UI5 tooling as open source and share it with you as open source. You can consume it freely. On the other hand side, we also consume a lot of open source back in the UI5 tooling to make and tailor a proper tooling for your need, which improves your development efficiency. So for example, there is the Express server running underneath, and the tooling itself, the UI5 tooling, has two key aspects, what it serves for. It's mainly one part, which is the building part, building your projects. And on the other hand part, it's the development server, which serves your project while you are developing. And these pillars are there. And for one of that, we are using the de facto standards of the Express.js to make this happening. Another aspect of the UI5 tooling is to be flexible and extensible. So, you know, we don't want to be the limiting factor at the end when we give the tooling to you. We had very often in the past that people need to reach out to us to ask for adding this or that feature. And with the UI5 tooling, it was really important for us to make it different this time, to make it possible for you to extend it if it's necessary. And on the one hand side, for the building part of the UI5 tooling, we made it possible that you can extend it with your custom tasks. And on the other hand side, for the development server, we made it possible to have custom middlewares for you. And this is just a starting point. We want to make this more open in every dimension at the end, that you can extend it and tailor it to your needs. Next to that, another aspect is the ease of integration. You know, we just don't want to have it possibility to just use it in one place, like maybe in a Maven environment or in a grunt environment. No, this time for us, it's important that you can really use it everywhere. And what wouldn't be better than having a command line interface which can run everywhere on your terminal for automations in a continuous integration system, whatever, everywhere where a terminal is available, it's nearly everywhere, and you can automate it, you can run it. And this is one part of the integration and capabilities. Next to the command line interface, we also have the opportunity to use our JavaScript APIs to integrate it deeply into your task runners like Grunt, like Gulp, whatever you want to have and come in future. So another part of the tooling was to enable for modern language features. This means that with the openness and extensibility of the tooling or the flexibility what we have, it's easily possible to use other open source tools to combine it with the tooling, like for example, Babel for transpiling, which allows you then to develop your applications with modern language features, ES6+ features, and then transpile your code. And with the openness and extensibility, you can integrate the transpiling capabilities in the tooling and run them and develop then your applications in a modern way. Then the last topic, the last key pillar on this slide, it's the support of any IDE of choice. This means that we don't want to proprietarily connect the UI5 tooling to the web IDE or to Business Application Studio. It should be also possible to just run it locally on your file system next to Visual Studio Code, to Atom, or to whatever editor you prefer. So it's really flexible. And the good thing is this tooling runs nearly everywhere with the CLI and runs for your project to build it or to run the development server. So with that, I want to briefly go into the architectural overview, and then let's go on with a demo after that. So when you look into the high-level overview of the UI5 tooling, you see one thing, it's a node-based implementation. So our command line interface or our UI5 tooling is based on Node. And this has the advantage that we can easily provide this command line interface aspects, and we have a very easy way to get it running locally on your machine. So if you start with the UI5 tooling, you see it on the left-hand side, there is two entry points mainly. It's the command line on the one-hand side and the web browser. Let's start with the command line. So you can go there with the tooling, you can run the npm install and install the UI5 CLI globally. This is a standard mechanism what developers use there. And with that, you have the UI5 tooling installed, and it comes with several modules like the file system module, the project, the logger, and two important parts for the development server, the server module, or for the build jobs or build tasks, the builder module. The project and the file system has the ability to abstract the access to the resources, to the UI5 runtime resources, for example, to get the Open UI5 or SAP UI5 resources into the development server. And the good thing is with all that, we also made it possible that you can consume the Open UI5 and SAP UI5 modules from the public npm registry, where also the UI5 tooling is available. Everything comes as an npm module into your environment, and this can be installed and used as a dependency for your project. And besides that, the extensibility story allows you then to be able to write own custom middlewares and tasks, add them as dependencies to your project, configure them in the UI5 tooling, we will see that later on, and then use that in your development server, for example, for the custom middlewares to have a proxy available, or for the build jobs to have custom tasks running there, like the transpiling, which extends and enhances your possibility to do it with the, to run your development with the UI5 tooling. Having said this, one aspect is also here in the dimensions, just for completeness, it's the availability for the UI5 tooling in all these IDEs. That's what I said beforehand, being agnostic also from the IDEs is pretty important. And with that, I think we have a pretty mighty tooling now built with the UI5 tooling available for you to improve your development experience. And with that, I would hand over to Merlin now to give you a demo and to see what it can.
Thank you. I will share my screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Peter. I will go ahead and give you a short overview of the capabilities of the UI5 tooling, so how you can use it for your project, what features it may have. And I want to start on the GitHub page, because the UI5 tooling is an open source project. This means you can find all the code and also get in touch with the community, with us on GitHub and through an open Slack channel. So yeah, you can find everything on GitHub. Just if you have problems, raise an issue here or look for existing issues. And if you scroll down here, we can also see all the different modules that make up the UI5 tooling. So it's a modularized project, but most of the time you will work with the UI5 CLI, which makes use of these other modules internally. Only in some advanced use cases, some more advanced scenarios, you might want to make use of some of these modules on a JavaScript level, and then you can have a look in them in more detail. So yeah, from here, we can head over to our documentation, where you get an overview of the main features of the tooling, also some brief introduction of the Node.js API, which, as I said, is more like for advanced use cases. And we also have a Get Started section here, which tells you how to install the UI5 tooling on your computer. and how to start a new project or enable an existing project. For starting new projects, we actually recommend using one of the many template generators that are out there. You'll also see later that there are already many integrations on a higher level where you might not even know that the UI5 tooling is used underneath. But for enabling an existing project, you might find this guide here useful, especially if you come from like the legacy grunt tooling that Peter mentioned. You can use this guide to get started with the UI5 tooling. So for this demo, I chose to use the OpenUI5 sample app, which is like our best practice sample application for demonstrating the capabilities of the UI5 tooling and also of the core UI5 framework. It's based on the OpenUI5 framework. So I slightly modified it, and in this demo, I will add an additional control, which actually comes from an SAP UI5 dependency or library. So as some of you might know, SAP UI5 is actually based on OpenUI5. So these are not like two completely different frameworks. OpenUI5 is the foundation, it's open source. And SAP UI5 is like the proprietary additional libraries that come on top of OpenUI5. So you can actually transform a project, an OpenUI5 project, very easily into an SAP UI5 project. And you can also consume OpenUI5 libraries, for example, some reuse libraries, which you find online from some other developers. You can easily integrate them in your SAP UI5 project. So let's have a look into this application. Like I said, it's the OpenUI5 sample app is pretty basic to-do list application. You'll see how it looks like later. I want to start with the UI5.yaml file. This is the configuration file for the UI5 tooling. It tells the tooling what this project is, like how it should be built, and yeah, let's walk through it starting from the top. So in this first line, we have the specification version. This is required, and it tells the tooling which set of features and configuration options this project would like to use. So this is slightly decoupled from the actual tooling version in a sense that currently the latest UI5 CLI version still works with the very first specification version. So it's downward compatible. And this is exactly what we want to achieve with the specification version, that you really can use and easily upgrade the UI5 tooling and still use it with very old libraries. For example, if you have a reuse library which just works, you don't really have to touch it. You don't have to. The tooling will adapt to based on the specification version to the functionality that this old library required, and you can just continue to use it. So here we are using specification version 2.0, which isn't even the latest one, but just perfect for the features that we're using here. Next, we have the name of this project, which is obviously required. It must be unique so we can identify the project. And next, we have the type. So this type, in this case, it's an application. We have also documentation on the different types available. Here in this UI5 builder documentation section. So there's application, library, theme library, and module. And this type basically defines or tells the tooling how this project should be built, which tasks should be executed during the build, and also how it should be served by the UI5 server. And in the future, we hope that we can have additional types here for some additional more sophisticated use cases. So this is an application, and it also makes use of this rather new framework configuration. So this framework configuration was added with UI5 tooling version 2.0 and also specification version 2.0. And this allows you to define the list of framework dependencies this project requires so that the UI5 tooling can take care and download these libraries in the correct version in the with the correct dependencies. So for OpenUI5, this already worked before with the npm packages of OpenUI5, but for SAP UI5, it became a bit more tricky with the versioning of SAP UI5 libraries. So we wanted to keep this easy, and therefore we integrated this functionality into the UI5 tooling. And now it's really a very easy way to consume the UI5 framework libraries. And if we want to have some more information on the SAP UI5 integration, I also published a blog post about this early last year, which goes into more detail also about this version problematic that I just mentioned. So this is all the framework dependencies. Any other dependencies, like your project dependencies, some reuse library that you develop by yourself, still go into the package JSON. They are treated like any NPM dependency. You install it through NPM, you manage it with the package JSON package log. This section here is only about the framework dependencies, so OpenUI5 and SAP UI5 libraries. After this comes a server configuration section. And here I defined a custom middleware called UI5 middleware live reload. This is actually not a standard part of the UI5 tooling, but custom middlewares can be added through the middleware extensibility. So I installed an NPM package for this middleware, and then just added this configuration, and the UI5 tooling will pick up this NPM dependency and hook it into the UI5 server, and which you can also see later on. So we have custom middlewares and also custom tasks, which allow you to enhance the tooling to adapt it to your development workflows. This middleware live reload that I'm using here is actually part of this UI5 ecosystem showcase project. So it's not developed by us. And if we scroll down here, we can see that there are already a lot of other custom tasks and custom middleware available here for really a lot of use cases. And you can also contribute to this project yourself. So I'll just demonstrate this now by first starting a UI5 server. So I already installed the UI5 CLI, and I can verify this by executing UI5 -help, which gives me an overview of the available commands. And first of all, we will simply start the UI5 server using the UI5 serve command. And since I cleared my local caches beforehand, you can now see that the tooling first starts to download all the libraries that I listed in the framework configuration section from NPM, like in a transparent way. It's just always downloads these on demand. So whenever required, for example, for this UI5 serve here. So it installed these and started the server. And now I can just refresh this here on my local host, and I can see the sample app coming up. So it's a pretty basic to-do list application. I can like check my list here. I can add new items. Yeah, very basic. So what we're going to do is we'll switch this over to use the SAP UI5 framework to add an additional library, the microchart library, so we can show a small chart up here. So like I said, first of all, we need to switch to use the SAP UI5 framework. And for this, we will use the UI5 use command. So I'll type UI5 use SAP UI5. And now this project is using SAP UI5 in version 185.2. And if we have a look into the UI5 YAML, we can see that it simply updated this value up here. So it didn't do much more. And you can also just change the YAML file itself. The command is just like a nice way to do it. And some of these commands also do some checks in the background, like checking whether the package is available in this version in the registry and so on. So I highly recommend using the command for changing this framework configuration. Next, we will add the SAP Suite UI microchart library. This is the library that provides the control that we want to add. And now this is also part of the section here. And if we start the UI5 server again with UI5 serve, we can see the missing package is being downloaded and the server is running again. So if I reload, nothing really changed because we didn't touch the application. We just added this additional dependency. So let's introduce this control that I was talking about. First of all, since we only added library to the UI5 YAML, which is only like for build time. We'll also add this dependency to the manifest.json so that the UI5 runtime also knows that this project uses this library and can load the respective preload files at runtime just for optimization. Next, I will add the control to the view. So first declaring the namespace and then adding this radial microchart chart to the header of the application. And you can also see the page automatically refreshes thanks to this live reload middleware. And now we have a small chart up here, which just automatically updates as we check our to-dos here. And that's basically already it for the UI5 server. Under the hood, it does a lot of things, like some special things which are required for UI5 development. If you work on a library, it does compile your themes, for example. But in the end, it's really just an Express server, and you can just hook in your custom middleware, your own middleware, to really adapt it to your workflows. Next, I will also quickly get into the UI5 build. So if we just type UI5 build, this is you will get the most basic build. So it will just generate a component preload for this application, which is what you use in most cases. So when deploying this application in an environment where there are multiple UI5 applications, typically, for example, a Fiori Launchpad, you do this UI5 build to get the component preload. So then you have one preload file that contains everything required for loading this application, and you deploy this. But I will show you a more sophisticated build that is offered by the UI5 tooling, which is the self-contained build. This is only really useful if you have a very special scenario where you basically only deploy this one application and you want to bundle all the dependencies, all the framework dependencies especially, into one single JavaScript file. We'll also add the all flag to build all dependencies so that additional files which can't be bundled, like CSS files, are also compiled and available also as fallbacks if something is not catched by the bundle. So if I execute this, it will take about 1 minute to finish. So I already prepared this, and I'll just start an HTTPS server for the result. Just need to wait for the Uglify task to finish so I can cancel it. So I'll serve this prepared this directory here with just was some HTTP server from npm. In this case, it's called WS. And this is now served on a different port. And if we look into the network trace here, filtered for JavaScript files, we can see that there's only one JavaScript file, which is loaded for the whole application, called SAP UI custom.js. This is also documented in the UI5 tooling documentation. So you can find more information on that there if this is something you need for your use case or which you might find useful. In the future, we plan to get more into this bundling to add additional capabilities there, or also some extension hooks so that you can have more influence on the way bundles are created. But for now, this is also very useful for those scenarios. Last but not least, I want to show you the fact that I mentioned earlier that you might already use the UI5 tooling without even realizing it. Because here in the SAP Business Application Studio, for example, I just created a basic application, a freestyle Fiori application from one of the many templates available there. And this internally already uses the UI5 tooling. If I expand this my app here, you can see that there's a UI5 YAML file with some custom tasks which are required in this environment, mainly for deploying. And also in the package.json, you can see that the UI5 build command is used here. And also I generated a Fiori elements application, which also has not only one UI5 YAML, but also an additional one for different scenario. And in this case, the UI5 tooling is actually wrapped behind Fiori command. So they actually developed an additional tooling on top of that, but you can also spot the UI5 build command here. So we really try to build a foundation for like offering a tool set for UI5 development with our core knowledge about that. And we can already see that many can like gain from integrating these basic tools into more sophisticated workflows and create additional tools on top of that. Yeah, that's basically it for the basic functionality of the UI5 tooling. And we are looking forward for your questions.
Amazing. So we have about 2 minutes left. So I don't know, Peter and Merlin, if you had a specific question you wanted to cover, and then I will let you guys know where any unanswered questions can go so we can get to them after the session.
Okay. Maybe this TypeScript one was one of the questions which couldn't have been answered or I did not answer in the chat. So maybe I briefly share my desktop because I want to give you a quick look into that. So we are currently working on this TypeScript enablement for the for UI5, and this is a bit related, unrelated to the UI5 tooling, but we also use the UI5 tooling to help us to generate these kind of types. So more or less what you can see here is this is really a brief look into a UI5 code already written with ES6 modules, ES classes, and so on. And we are using also a plugin. It's a plugin available already as open source from Ryan Murphy. He's developing that, and we are able to use this. It's the ES Babel transpile or ES to UI5. I need to look that up again. One second. This name is a bit lengthy. Let me see. That's what we use. The transform UI5 plugin from this guy, and this helps us to convert our code base into that. And our main work, what we are doing now to make this clear, is really to prepare now the types from SAP UI5. They are already available on NPM. They are not yet perfect, and we are currently working heavily on to get that done. We promise that UI5Con that till mid of this year, at the next UI5Con, hopefully we will have this then available for you to develop, and it's currently really in the pipeline to get that working. But this is really no fake here, more or less, and this is already a running application. Unfortunately, we have not much time, and I hope we can soon make something maybe also available for you to play around with that. Yeah.
Excellent. So we are at time. I want to thank you, Merlin and Peter, for hosting this session with me. This has been very great. The fact that we're about to get shut off speaks to the fact that everyone was very interested in this. I've posted in the link some resources for you guys. If there are any unanswered questions, please post them in the community. We will get back to you. I've also put the links to the tags you can follow. We will be sending a follow-up thank you email for everybody, and it's going to be including the company or the the community profiles of both Peter and Merlin, so you can get in touch with them, as well as any other resources you need. So with that, we're going to shut down this meeting, and we want to thank everybody for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.